Have you ever smiled in a room full of people, while something inside you quietly broke apart? Perhaps you've whispered to yourself, "I'm fine," so many times that you almost believed it. Almost. But pain, real pain, it doesn't disappear because you ignore it. It doesn't vanish because you've learned how to silence your tears. It waits. It waits in the shadowed corners of your soul, growing roots beneath the surface. And like a forgotten wound under bandages, it festers, quietly, invisibly, until one day it shapes your choices, your relationships, your very sense of self. You think you're making decisions from clarity, but what if your life has been driven by the very pain you swore you had buried? We've been taught to hide our sorrow, to be strong, to be positive, to move on. But strength without truth is just another mask, and masks are heavy. When you deny your pain, it doesn't disappear. It simply changes form. It becomes anger at those you love. It becomes numbness in moments that should bring joy. It becomes anxiety in stillness and exhaustion in silence. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's what denied pain does. It steers the wheel of your life from the back seat. You chase love not because you're ready to give, but because you're desperate to fill a hollow space inside. You strive for perfection not because it fulfills you, but because you're terrified of being seen as not enough. You avoid confrontation not because you're at peace, but because you're still haunted by rejection. This isn't weakness. This is the echo of wounds that were never allowed to speak. Imagine this, a garden where the weeds are never pulled, only covered by layers of artificial grass. For a while it looks clean, ordered, fine. But underneath the roots are alive, pushing upward, breaking through, cracking the surface. That's what emotional denial does to the soul. True healing doesn't begin with a smile, it begins with a tremble, a whisper, a moment of truth when you stop pretending, even if just with yourself. So let me ask you, what pain have you silenced so well you forgot it was even there? What old sadness still echoes in your laughter? What would happen if, instead of pushing it down again, you gently turned toward it, not to fix it, not to erase it, just to say, "I see you. You are part of me, and I'm ready to listen." Healing does not come from rejecting your pain, it comes from honoring it. It's in the tenderness of sitting with your ache without rushing it away, in recognizing that the child inside you, the one who was never allowed to cry, still waits for someone to finally hold them. You cannot outrun what lives inside you, but you can stop, turn, and walk hand in hand with the parts of you that have waited in the dark. Because when you stop denying your pain, you begin to reclaim your life. And that is where healing begins. Did you grow up believing that one day someone would come and fix everything? Maybe it was a parent who never really saw you, a partner you hoped would finally make you feel safe. Or maybe, in your quietest moments, you still wait for a sign, something, someone, anything, to pull you out of the ache you carry. But here's the painful truth. No one is coming to save you. Not because you're unworthy, not because the world is cruel, but because the healing you seek cannot come from outside you. This is the truth no fairy tale ever told us. There is no knight, no perfect healer, no magical moment where everything suddenly makes sense and the pain dissolves without effort. There's just you, and the choices you make in the silence of your own becoming. We cling to the hope of rescue because it's easier than facing the terrifying beauty of our own power. Because when we believe someone else is responsible for our healing, we don't have to face how lost we've become in our own story. But you are not helpless. You never were. The little child who longed to be held, who cried themselves to sleep, they did survive. You survived. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." You've been dreaming of someone to come fix what was broken. But the awakening begins the moment you stop waiting and start returning to yourself. This isn't about being alone. It's about ownership, about stepping out of victimhood, not because your pain isn't valid, but because your healing matters more than your blame. Blame keeps the wound open. Responsibility begins to close it. Take a breath. Right now. What if you stopped running? What if you stopped waiting? What if you became the one you've been waiting for? You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. present enough to listen to what your soul has been whispering all along. Come back to me. You are the healer. You are the guardian. You are the one who gets to choose a different path. And yes, it's terrifying. It's overwhelming. It's not fair. But it's also the most sacred moment of your life. Because when you stop waiting to be saved, you finally begin to live. Have you ever felt loved, but still completely alone? Like the people around you appreciate you, but only the version of you that's carefully curated, the one that smiles at the right time, agrees when it's easier, and hides the parts of you that feel too messy, too loud, too real. It's a quiet kind of grief, being loved for a mask, while your true self waits in silence. This is the heartbreak of living as your persona, the version of you built to survive, to fit in, to be accepted. Carl Jung called it the mask of the collective psyche, the part of us we show to the world, shaped not by our soul, but by what we believe others want from us. Over time, we become so good at performing that we forget it's a performance. We call it being nice, strong, easygoing. But inside, there's a quiet voice that asks, if they saw the real me, would they still stay? We start trading truth for connection, authenticity for safety, presence for approval. But here's the ache we carry. Love that isn't rooted in truth doesn't nourish. It binds. It drains. It keeps us in rooms where we cannot breathe. And the more we are praised for our mask, the more we fear taking it off. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror and wondered who you really are beneath the expectations? You're not alone. Many of us have lived entire lifetimes this way, being who we thought we had to be just to feel worthy of love. But the cost is steep, because love built on performance is never truly felt, not even when it's real. Why? Because deep down, you know it's not you they love. It's the version you made to be loved. Imagine standing in a crowd smiling, laughing, while the true you watches from the shadows unseen. There is no deeper loneliness than being invisible in plain sight. So let me ask you, what parts of yourself have you exiled just to belong? What truths have you buried to keep the peace? What would happen if just once you let yourself be fully seen, even if it meant being misunderstood? The path of healing begins when we start removing the mask, layer by layer. When we stop asking, will they love me if I show them who I am? And start asking, can I love myself enough to stop hiding? You won't be for everyone. And that's not a failure. That's freedom. Because the ones who stay, the ones who see your soul and still choose you, are the ones who don't need the mask. They're the ones your heart has been waiting for. So let it crack. Let the image fall. And let your truth be enough. Because the real you, messy, raw, luminous, is the only version that can ever truly be loved. What if the life you're living is not a reflection of your desires, but of your wounds? There's a painful truth many never realize. The pain we refuse to face becomes the architect of our reality. You think you're choosing your partner, your job, your reactions. But so often, it's the echo of an old wound making the decisions. The abandonment you never spoke of, the betrayal you buried, the childhood where love felt conditional. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is what happens when unhealed pain takes the wheel. You find yourself in the same relationships, different faces, same heartbreak. You sabotage opportunities, call it bad luck, and wonder why peace feels so unfamiliar. You say you want love, but keep choosing people who can't meet you. You say you want freedom, but your fear of being alone chains you quietly to the past. It's not your fault. The wound is not your fault. But if you don't see it, if you don't name it, it will write your story for you. There's a part of you that learned to survive by numbing, avoiding, pretending. That part is not wrong. It did what it had to do. But you are no longer just surviving. You're being called to something deeper, healing. And healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering differently. It means looking at the moment everything broke and choosing not to build your life from that place anymore. Imagine walking through a forest. At first it feels familiar. You've walked this path many times. But as you walk, you notice something. Every turn, every choice, every direction, it leads you back to the same dark place. This is the path of an unexamined wound. Now, imagine pausing, breathing, turning inward, and asking, what am I carrying that is not mine to carry anymore? That moment of awareness, it changes everything. You begin to see the patterns. You begin to hear the voice beneath your reactions. You begin to feel the pain, not to be consumed by it, but to understand it. That's where destiny shifts, because once the wound is seen, it no longer holds the same power. Once the child inside you is heard, they stop screaming through your choices. Once you realize that you've been acting from a place of pain, you gain the power to act from a place of love. The wound doesn't disappear, but it no longer defines you. You become the author again. And maybe, for the first time, your life starts to reflect not what hurt you, but what heals you. There comes a moment in every healing journey when you look around and realize no one else truly sees what you're carrying. You try to explain, but your words fall flat. You try to open up, but their silence feels louder than your pain. You start to wonder, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm too much, too sensitive, too broken. But you're not. You're just waking up to a truth most people aren't ready to face. Not everyone will understand your pain. And that's okay. This isn't because your pain is invalid. It's because we live in a world that rushes to fix, to avoid, to gloss over what makes us uncomfortable. When you're honest about your sadness, they say, stay positive. When you speak your truth, they say, don't be so dramatic. When you cry, they hand you a distraction. But what if your tears are sacred? What if your pain doesn't need to be explained and only held? Carl Jung once said, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. This is the loneliness of being awake in a world that still sleeps, and yet this is also where your power begins. Because when you stop expecting others to validate your wounds, you begin to hold space for yourself. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop needing approval to feel real. You become your own witness. Imagine sitting across from yourself, not as a judge, but as a friend. No fixing, no rushing, just presence, just truth. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need one safe place, and sometimes that place is you. So let me ask you, how much of your healing have you delayed, waiting for someone else to get it? How many pieces of yourself have you hidden just to be accepted? What would happen if, just for today, you stopped explaining and simply honored what you feel? There's a quiet strength in walking your path without applause, in grieving without an audience, in healing even when no one else sees the work you're doing. It's not about isolation, it's about liberation. Because the moment you stop needing to be understood is the moment you finally begin to understand yourself. Have you ever found yourself in the stillness of an empty room and felt an ache you couldn't name? No voices, no noise, just you and everything you've been trying not to feel. For many, solitude feels like punishment, like exile, as if being alone is proof that something is wrong with us, that we've failed, that we're unloved, unwanted. But here's the truth you were never told. Solitude is not punishment. It is your soul calling you back home. We live in a world that glorifies distraction. Noise is celebrated. Silence is feared. We scroll, we plan, we perform, anything to avoid the moment we're finally alone with ourselves. Why? Because silence reveals what busyness hides. Because in the quiet, we hear the voice we've ignored for too long. Carl Jung said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But eventually the distractions lose their power. The noise becomes hollow, and your soul, quiet, persistent, begins to whisper, come back. Not to the roles you've played, not to the masks you've worn, but to the core of who you are. Beneath it all, solitude is where the real work begins. It's where the grief surfaces, not to drown you, but to cleanse. It's where the anger rises, not to destroy, but to reveal your boundaries. It's where the shame softens, because finally, no one's watching. And you can breathe. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's vulnerable. But it's also sacred. Because in solitude, you are no longer performing. You are just being. And that is where the healing begins to deepen. Imagine sitting at the edge of a quiet lake. No one around, just your breath, the rustle of the wind, the gentle beating of your own heart. There's no one to impress, no one to protect, just you, raw, real, whole. This is where you remember who you are when the world isn't looking. So let me ask you, what parts of yourself emerge in the silence? What truths have been waiting patiently behind the noise? Can you stop running just for a moment and sit with your soul as if it were your oldest friend? Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is reunion. And when you answer its call, you don't return broken. You return whole. We spend years, sometimes lifetimes, trying to protect ourselves from the truth. We tell ourselves we're over it. We say, it doesn't matter anymore. We build stories around our pain, tidy narratives that help us feel in control. But deep down, we know. We know the hurt we've hidden. We know the parts of ourselves we still don't accept. We know the truths we've tried to silence. And here's the truth that shatters all illusions. Acceptance hurts, but pretending hurts more. There is a cost to denial. It may feel safer in the short term, but in the long run it drains us. Slowly, quietly, completely. Every time you say, I'm fine, when you're breaking. Every time you laugh when you want to scream. Every time you pretend you've moved on when the wound is still bleeding. You chip away at your soul. Carl Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But it's also the most liberating. Acceptance is not about giving up. It's not about condoning what happened or settling for less. It's about finally seeing your reality, not through the lens of who you wish you were or who others wanted you to be, but through the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are now. It's about standing in front of the mirror and saying, yes, I hurt. Yes, I was wrong. Yes, I still carry shame, guilt, fear, and longing. And also, yes, I am still worthy. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot love yourself while rejecting the parts that feel unlovable. Acceptance is the doorway, and yes, it stings, but once you step through, something begins to shift. The pretending stops, the weight lifts, and the real work, the sacred work of healing can finally begin. So I'll ask you, what truth have you been avoiding? What mask have you worn for so long it feels like skin? And what would happen if today you let it go? The world doesn't need another version of you that fits in. The world and you would need the version that is free, because once you stop pretending for it, you begin to live. So now I gently ask you, what pain have you been carrying in silence, waiting for someone else to notice? What truth within you is ready to be seen, not by the world but by you? What would your life look like if you finally stopped running and turned inward with compassion? The healing you seek won't come from becoming someone else. It begins the moment you fully return to who you already are. Carl Jung once wrote, only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life. And maybe that's the paradox of healing. It hurts, but it frees. It strips away, but reveals. It breaks. And somehow in the breaking you become whole. If this message touched something deep within you, and you'd like to support the creation of more content like this, consider leaving a super thanks. Your gift helps this channel continue to speak to the soul. If you're not yet subscribed, I invite you to join this journey of healing, depth, and inner awakening. And now, another video is waiting for you, a doorway to your next revelation. Click it and keep walking toward the truth that's been waiting for you.